Hello, and welcome to the Voices of Bellevue School District podcast, where we amplify the voices of students, staff, and families, sharing their unique lived experiences to strengthen our Bellevue community. In each episode, we'll explore We Belong, significant cultural traditions, customs, and lived experiences of our beloved Bellevue community. We learn academic programs and innovative initiatives, along with the staff and students behind them. We lead discussions with leaders in our community on topics that drive innovation in education. Hi, I'm Janine Thorne, Chief of Communications for the Bellevue School District, and I am joined by three of my colleagues. I would like for you to introduce yourself and tell us what your favorite subject was in school.
Hi, I'm Don Dixon. I'm the Director of Transportation, and my favorite subject was history.
Oh, wow.
I'm Jack McCloud, Executive Director, Facilities Operations for the school district. My favorite subject in school was woodshop.
Wendy Weyer, Nutrition Services Director, and my favorite subject in school was math.
Wow. I think that all of your favorite subjects kind of relate to what you do a little bit, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So we adopted a sustainability policy in April of 2023. I think that's policy 6811, and it focuses on minimizing environmental impact and increasing understanding of sustainability. It was a very exciting time. It was done in partnership with our school board, who led the efforts, but our students really got involved. The three of you are here to just talk about some of the things that you have done in your departments that partner with that policy and enhance it. So, Wendy, tell me a little bit about some of the things that you're doing in nutrition services and your team are working on to reduce our carbon footprint as a district.
Sure. I will say nutrition services in partnership with the city of Bellevue began work probably close to 20 years ago on this subject. There was a lot of efforts at that time to look at reducing down what was going into the garbage. And so we worked with the city on some grant efforts that helped us in transitioning kind of some simple things from, our lunch trays used to be styrofoam, actually moving to durable trays. Those are quite expensive, but we were able to receive some grants from the city to do that. As many of our schools were remodeled and we were able to add in dishwashers, it created that opportunity to move from basically styrofoam or compostable items to those durable trays. Now we have what we call real silverware in our elementary schools, durable trays in our middle schools. We still use a compostable tray in our high schools, and a lot of that is because high school students will eat all over campus. We've moved to compostable utensils for them as an effort to minimize the single-use plastics. I think nobody likes seeing kind of the plastic wrappers all over the place. But students really, that was something that we did in collaboration with students. We tested a number of different products. Those were some of our initial efforts. This year, we've done a lot more work on introducing different types of plant-based menus for students, so some different meatless options for them, and also some local procurement. So how can we work with our local farmers within the state of Washington to bring in not only fruits and vegetables, but also proteins like beef and salmon, some grain products like tortillas. So it really has been fun and creative to be able to work on this initiative, which allows us to increase what we're offering to students.
Jack, would you tell us a little bit about what buildings? We have some of the most beautiful buildings. Thank you to our taxpayers and people who support our levies and bonds, though that's very important. You've been with the district. How long have you been with the district?
54 years.
Yeah. And what has been one of the biggest projects that you feel has contributed to reducing our carbon footprint? There are many, so give us a couple.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things with our footprint. There's what we call operational carbon. And operational carbon is carbon products that are off-gas from either the fuels that you use to heat the building and so on. And then there is embedded carbon, and that is in the materials that build the building. So those are the two types. So what we've done to really decrease the amount of operational carbon is we're doing strategies as example of ground source heat pumps, and for heating and cooling, we've enhanced the building envelope with increased insulation to keep the cold air out and keep the warm air in. High efficiency HVAC systems, dedicated outside air supplies, and things like this that provide a much cleaner air product for the inhabitants, but also minimize a lot of the leakage of hot air and cold air and so on.
So do we have HVACs in all of our buildings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they all have. And those are heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems.
And I know that you took many of us on a tour, for example, at Newport. I remember going to Newport, and we went through some of the cooling and heating system in Newport. Is that something that has been enhanced at Newport? And how, if not, has it been enhanced at some of the other buildings?
At Newport, it was enhanced over the original building they had. And things like heat recovery units that basically don't just vent warm conditioned air out. They take and pull the heat out of it before it's exhausted out of the building. And so that's a standard process at most of our buildings now. And this is, and we've been doing these projects since 2022, and we've done at least one building a year, and we have completed 27 complete rebuilds in the district at that time. And one of the things is that we started out and we took a lot of these things into consideration, and we've continued to go ahead and improve upon those each time that we go through. And a lot of that's just because of the advances in technology and systems out there. Mm-hmm. We're using a lot of solar arrays, photovoltaic systems, and solar hot water, and then how we orient the building. On a new elementary, for an example, that you're starting over from scratch, we try to orientate the building to make the best use of natural lighting so you don't have to rely on as much artificial lighting.
How hard is that in terms of the climate that we're in? We don't get a lot of sun. Is that hard to do, or how does the process really enhance it so that we can harness that energy?
The solar arrays that we're using in the buildings now are producing a positive amount of energy. Mm. And so our most recent elementary school, Puesta del Sol, is what we call a net zero school. It produces as much energy as it uses. And so even though we have cloudy days and other things here, we are still producing electrical energy through the solar panels that we also now are storing in batteries, which will now enable us to use that battery to start up the schools first thing in the morning, which is when our highest schedule of rating from the energy companies goes into effect. Wow. So that saves us. Our rate starts lower when we're running on batteries.
Speaking of batteries, I know that we just recently got a grant for the Transportation Department for electric buses. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the grant and what it did for us?
So back in the first part of the school year, we applied for an EPA grant to get an electric bus. We were approved for the grant, and right now we're in the stage of getting the real okay to order the bus. So I think for transportation, we talk about carbon footprint. We've already started the carbon footprint thing. And what I mean by that is we currently burn clean diesel buses. Or people ask, well, what is a clean diesel bus? Well, Jack might know because he's old enough. But when you have a diesel engine and you're driving down the road and you see it blow out black soot, that's not a clean diesel product. If you go down the street and you're behind a diesel engine vehicle and you see it doesn't blow out that black soot, it's a clean burning diesel engine. And that's what we have. And we also are using propane buses. We have about 10 to 15 propane buses that we're using currently. So we've started the process a while back. And we will continue to move forward with, looking to see what the electric bus brings.
Okay. And so that battery on the bus, to Jack's point about batteries, mm-hmm. for the buildings. What does that battery, what's the life on that battery, and how does that work? Do you know about that part?
I do. The life on the battery right now is 11 years. Our challenge is we have a 13-year rotation for the state for our buses. So I know right now that they're trying to get better or build a better battery. So we'll see what the next 2-3 years hold.
Okay, but we will get funding and we will get that bus
Absolutely.
that will have that one.
Yes.
Okay. So Wendy, when you talked about the styrofoam, I remember the styrofoam, the old school styrofoam. Yes, I'm dating myself, talking about being old. How are students responding to this? And I know that there's some students that are working in conjunction to make sure that, we are, using sustainable wear and such, but how are students responding to this, and then parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think the response has been very positive. Certainly as more products have become available, it has made the change easier. Whether it's durable trays or utilizing compostable trays, there is a cost difference in that, including with going from what we used to call the old sport kits that we used in elementary schools to regular silverware. Those are things that really over the years, students have really been the voice in bringing forward concerns. I think a lot of times when there is different science classes that, they're having different subjects about how to save the environment, the dolphins, et cetera, you will oftentimes get that kind of communication. And I think part of this is we have involved the students. So when we did make the change to go to compostable utensils in middle schools and high schools, we actually piloted them out in the schools. There are many different products that you can choose, but we actually settled on a birch wood compostable utensil. And it was something that we got positive feedbacks from the students. We've actually been using it, I believe this is our third school year. There are some differences. I mean, you will see a different kind of mouthfeel from that. But I think, definitely our students within Bellevue understand the reason behind what our efforts are, and any kind of, discomfort or change in kind of the palette, they have all determined is not really something that, the greater good for the environment outweighs that, little bit of a perhaps taste of a wood on the tongue or something like that. So they have been very positive towards the changes that we've made.
For the trays that are plastic that can be reused, what would you say to someone who would say, well, what about broken and damaged, trays and utensils? Doesn't that add to the cost that then might, negate the,
the change happening?
The change happening, yeah.
Certainly, it is a difference. I mean, a durable tray, say that we use in the elementary schools, can cost upwards of $15 a piece, but those trays, for the most part, will last for years. The end result of not putting styrofoam or even a compostable tray in the garbage has then a net savings for our facilities department, because those things it's not garbage that needs to be taken away. They can have smaller dumpsters. Again, we've been fortunate to have great assistance from grants with the city of Bellevue that has allowed us to purchase those items and even purchase some replacement items. So for the most part, it's been a positive change for us that really has not had a direct kind of impact on our overall budget.
Speaking of partnerships, I know that you work very closely with contractors and vendors. Do you want to talk a little bit about the relationship with any of those that have helped develop some of the net zero capabilities in some of our buildings?
Yeah, a lot of that really takes place with the engineers and the architects that design the building. And so before anything is actually constructed, it's all drawn on paper and multiple versions, overlaying different systems, electrical, mechanical, the rest of it in terms of where it has to be routed in the building. So that's done by the engineering group. And so when we were first getting ready to do the design work on Puesta del Sol, the engineers came to us and said, we think now the way things are that we can probably get your EUI, which is our energy use intensity, we can get that down into the double-digit teens for you. And we said, okay, so that would be somewhere between 10 and 20. And energy use intensity, net zero, means that EUI is zero. You produce as much as you use. And so at that time, people sitting around the table from the district said, well, that's good, but what we're thinking about is net zero. Let's make it happen. And so as a result, that is the way the Puesta del Sol project took place. And so it was there to have us set the standards, and then they delivered to it.
Hey, BSD community. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, BSD. As we kick off the fourth quarter, schools across the district are gearing up for a season of celebrations, promotions, graduations, and all of the milestones in between. This June, we honor the perseverance and growth of our graduating students, from elementary school triumphs to high school farewells. Every graduation tells a story worth celebrating. Want to be part of the moment? Check out the news page or the district calendar at bsd405.org. Save the date, show your support, and celebrate with our students, teachers, and staff.
What's on the horizon for transportation and sustainability?
Well, I think, with the electric bus coming out, you'll see more districts start to go towards that way. I can say the biggest challenges that we're facing with the electric bus is travel distance. Most of our buses stay within district, but we do have out-of-district trips like sports trips and stuff like that. And it's continuing to be monitored and be tested by the manufacturer. It has to do with the battery life and stuff like that. So it's an ongoing process. I say in about 5 years, most of the districts will be mostly electric.
So, Jack, I know that you talked about Puesta del Sol, and what are some of the other net zero or sustainability models that have been implemented at some of the other schools that you want to talk about? And then I want you to talk a little bit about how our bonds and our levies bonds go to support the work that we do to get such good buildings.
Sure. Right now, there's in the state of Washington, there's a Clean Buildings Act, and that goes into effect for buildings over 200,000 square feet in 2026. And you have a targeted EUI, energy use intensive goal that you have to hit. If not, there's some fines that they're going to levy against that. So what we've been doing is we've been fortunate to have buildings that we've been able to go ahead and have very efficient right from the get-go, even before the whole net zero became a real thing. And certainly the generosity of the Bellevue taxpayers to support bonds to be able to go ahead and provide new schools throughout the district to replace the schools that were built back in the 50s and early 60s has been instrumental in allowing us to be able to do that. And so part of our thing has been, how can we go ahead and make sure that our buildings are performing to that standard? So at our high schools this year, we went out and did what we call energy audits to check all the systems that are running. Are they running as efficiently as they can? What kind of things can we do to make them more efficient and better improve on things? And so one of the things at Bellevue High is that we went and did all LED lighting retrofits, because when that building was done in 2010, it was using incandescent bulbs and regular fluorescent tubes. So we've gone to LEDs up there this year. We've included some new HVAC control measures to make our controlling of the HVAC units more efficient. And we've also used some things with heat recovery units that we've had, and we've tuned those up to make them more efficient. As a result, Bellevue High's EUI was reduced from 57.9 in 2022 to 45.3 this year.
Wow.
So that's a pretty significant drop in a fairly large building. So Bellevue High is 260,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. Interlake, we went from 59.2 in 2022, and this year, after doing an LED light retrofit, we were at 43.8. Mm. So that has taken us down significantly. And a case of point of reference on this thing is the national average EUI for high schools nationwide is 104.4. So even before we did anything, these things were performing well over what any other schools group of schools in the nation we're doing.
Do you hear that, Bellevue families? That is amazing. We are half of the nation's
Right.
standard.
And continuing to fine-tune the systems and improve it. The other thing is that our utility costs, so our Puget Sound energy bills, are paid for out of the general fund, the utility costs. So when we can reduce those down, that's a savings to the general fund, which is where we're having a real issue right now with just the state of things in this state with, general fund dollars to support education.
That's a very important point.
And the other thing it does do is that Puget Sound Energy is doing a 7% annual rate increase. So this gives us an offset towards that increase that's happening. So even though we cut down the amount we're using, the amount we're paying per unit goes up. So anything that we can do to use less, be more efficient with it, that's going to save general fund dollars. Same thing as Wendy mentioned about utility costs for disposing of old paper plates and things like that. That certainly makes a difference as we can reduce the amount of things going to the recycle or to the landfills.
As we have this conversation, talk about some of the things that you see in the future coming that you want to invest in to make sure that nutrition services stays on point with pushing us towards more sustainable options for your department.
Sure. Some of the things that we've implemented over the last we're in our second school year, is utilizing a kitchen that we have at Tilica Middle School as a central kitchen for us. It's not a central kitchen in the sense that it's producing all of the food for the district, but we're utilizing that space to help us with really expanding some of our scratch prepared items. So not only a cost savings, but also looking at where there's opportunities for us to source local foods that we can utilize there. So decreasing kind of that travel time that food comes to us. I will say, I think some of the things that I'm hopeful for in the future really is a continued partnership and perhaps a renewed partnership with learning and teaching to look at how can we incorporate more sustainability, environmental subjects, elementary, middle schools, and high schools, so that a lot of the things that we're doing, whether it's transportation, nutrition, facilities, kids and families understand a bit more about it. So as we continue to bring about changes, like offering more plant-based menus, kids can understand the reason why we're doing that. I think that will help a lot of our efforts really go farther. So I'm hopeful in the next year that we will see some of those increased partnerships so that we're not kind of putting these changes in place in a silo, but there really is a collective understanding across the district of why we're doing it and get kids and families on board with that.
Many of our teachers are doing an excellent job on the classroom level at talking to and teaching students the importance of this. And as parents listen to this, then you'll see how these pieces connect interdepartmentally and then across the schools and across the district. We are trying to reduce our carbon footprint as much as possible. So this is important, very important. Recently, Interlake Horticulture program had their hydroponic event, and they are harvesting all of these vegetables and herbs, and they're going to scale these across the schools beyond just Interlake. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So this was something which was a happy surprise. I was contacted by the teacher with the horticultural program at Interlake about if we build it, will we accept it? And they were able to essentially set up a fork farm and are growing lettuce that we are currently utilizing exclusively for Interlake High School. Kids can just walk the product up to our kitchen. We've been doing that since October of this year. There are conversations and some discussions about how to scale that to be something that perhaps they could grow not only salad greens, but other things that we could utilize in the school meal program. So we're very excited to have that be something that could be a potential, student, activity, student learning opportunity where they can then see it within their cafeterias, whether it's at elementary, middle schools, or high schools.
That is so exciting. Dr. Aramaki went last year to Lisa Lindholm's class at Interlake High School. And it was just really fun to see that hydroponic at work. That whole process, and then to know that then some of that is being transported to other schools like Newport, for example, and then they're using it in their culinary department. The kids are using it, using the herbs.
Yeah, I think there's definitely conversations that are happening. I think there are some other examples across the country of, schools being able to successfully essentially create a farm that supports the school meal operation. So we're happy to be part of this and, have continued conversations about, how those things may be able to scaled up to support a number of schools or district-wide, depending on kind of what that growth might be over the years.
Yeah, and all of the exciting parts about our buildings. A little known fact, listeners, I don't know if you know, but at Interlake High School, we have chickens. Yes, we do. Do you know about the chickens that are back there at Newport?
I do.
Jack knows everything about buildings.
I know about the chickens at Newport as well for the culinary program.
Yeah.
Nutrition Services doesn't have any chicken.
Yeah. Nice disclaimer. I got it. And so as we look forward to what's happening in buildings, we know that we can't do it without the support of our bonds and your participation, your partnership with our contractors, and just all of the intricacies that go into making sure that our buildings are either, as net zero as possible or reducing our carbon footprint. As we look forward, what do you see on the horizon for our buildings?
Well, we're getting down to the last two buildings that we have as part of our whole bond measure to rebuild, that were, at least the bonds were authorized by the voters back in 2020. And that is the Big Picture School, which we are currently relocating to Eastgate as part of the consolidation effort a few years ago. And one of the factors on that one is that we've designed a new building to meet the needs of what Big Picture needs for their program. And then we've been able to utilize the Eastgate building to be able to accommodate that, and then adding some additional items that they need to have, a little bit larger dining commons and some other kinds of spaces that are more open and more appropriate for their program. And so one of the things by utilizing Eastgate as an example is by saving a lot of the building and the foundations, we saved 56% in our embodied carbon footprint by utilizing existing structures rather than having to pour new concrete and new materials, steel and the other types of things. So that's been a positive way for us to work on that one. For the upcoming, right now we're involved in selecting architects for international school. And so they will be given a direction that, one, we want to be looking not only at net zero in terms of our energy use, but then also look at both our embodied carbon footprint as well as the operational, which is reflected in the net zero capability of the building.
And so if I hear you correctly, then we have gone through all of the schools and made upgrades, changes to reduce the carbon footprint, and these two coming up will be the completion of that cycle.
Right. They should reflect the current thought around reducing carbon footprint, both operational and embodied, yes.
I'm sure you're already thinking of what's ahead, what's next, and we'll have to come back and have more conversation. As we close up our discussion, any last words or things that you want our families to know about your programs, about what you're doing for sustainability efforts in the district that we haven't talked about?
For transportation, we will continue to monitor the electric bus situation. I personally feel it will get better because as technology moves forward, it gets better. We will continue to use clean diesel buses and still continue to use our propane buses to help with our carbon footprint.
Yeah. And a part of what you'll do outside of just the buses is just look at how we run routes efficiently.
Yes, that is another piece to it. And we are constantly looking at that on how to save, not only save money, but it's save miles. And that also helps with our carbon footprint.
Absolutely. And we probably will hear more from Dr. Aramaki and you and some other leadership about what's in store for, just making sure that we can reduce our carbon footprint and make better communication and transportation safety.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I would just encourage families to make sure that they check out our district website, specifically go to our nutrition services page, and more specifically our menus page. We really are trying to utilize our menus page as that location for families to know what kind of highlights are going on. So things like our, local food procurement, our new recipes, those kinds of things. Our menus, we print that on. So just encourage families to maybe, every so often, or at least once a month, go there, check out what we're doing. We have our contact information provided there if they have some feedback that they would like to provide. But I think there's a lot of exciting things going on within, and across the district. So get informed, learn a little bit more about what we're doing.
And a lot on social media. Mm-hmm. So Barry Silva, who is our social media digital marketing specialist, works with you, Wendy, to take lots of pictures of our delicious foods. A lot of those, and the menus are always posted. And so I hope you parents appreciate that.
Well, and I will say sometimes the comments people make are like, that's not the food, but it really is the food. Barry just helps us with a little bit of lighting with it. But, I think, we have a great school meal program in Bellevue, and we have a good participation from our students. I think we try and make sure that we have a very diverse array of foods that we're providing to our diverse community here in Bellevue, and just would encourage families to learn more through that.
Beautiful buildings, great food, safe transportation. What more can you ask for, BSD? That's my cheesy commercial. But again, Wendy, Weyer, Jack McCloud, Don Dixon, thank you for joining us. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Bellevue.
You just listened to Don, Wendy, and Jack talk about what our district is doing to work towards our sustainability goals. Want to hear from our students? In case you missed it, check out episode 12 of our podcast, where our inspirational students on the Sustainability Committee discuss why sustainability is important to them and steps you can take for a more sustainable future. Thanks, Bellevue.